Sara here from Seattle EMDR Associates. Today I want to talk about something that I think sets us apart from other therapy practices in the area, which is the fact that we use something called feedback-informed treatment. So what this means basically is that we have a process in place to gather data every session from a client, and it just takes a few moments about how they're doing through their week, how they were doing sort of before they came in, specifically on like how are they doing on their goals or specific issues that they want to work on, like are they actually feeling like they're making progress, as well as just like how's your sort of general overall well-being during the week. And then at the end of every session, we do a feedback measure, a feedback survey, which again is just, it's very brief, and it's sort of like, did this session work for you today? Did it seem like the therapist understood you? Did it feel like you got your needs met? Did you get to talk about what you wanted to talk about? And so the reason that we do this, there are a bunch of reasons that we do it. First of all, research shows that it improves therapy outcomes overall, right? And of course, we want to be the best therapist that we can be. So if there's something that we can do to improve our service to you, then we're going to do it. And so that's the primary reason that we're using feedback-informed treatment. The second is that it gives us the opportunity to sort of track and gather data in a way that previously we just sort of, and lots of other therapists, we just sort of rely on our sort of gut and our memory of like, yeah, it seems like this client's doing okay. By filling out these weekly measures, we actually can see a graph of, oh yeah, this client is improving, or this client, I thought they were doing okay, but the way that they're answering this survey actually makes it seem like they're not doing that much. They're not doing better, or they're maybe even doing a little bit worse. And so that's so useful for us to have that information, because then we can bring it up in therapy. We can say, hey, it seems like, you've actually been feeling more anxious this week. Like, what's that about? What can we do to focus on that? And so since we started rolling it out, a lot of my clients have really liked it and found it useful, because there can be so much going on in our day-to-day lives. Every day during the week, there's like some other work stressor or relationship or, something. And it can be really easy to come into therapy and just sort of talk about whatever seems like the most stressful or the most like top of mind that week. And then we can sort of lose sight of the bigger therapy goals, right? Like if your overall goal in therapy is to reduce anxiety, but we're just talking about your job stress every week, like that might be helpful, but it might be even more helpful if we remember to focus on the bigger picture anxiety on a regular basis to make sure that we're working on what you actually want to be working on in therapy. And the other thing that I think is so interesting and useful about doing feedback-informed therapy is that when we're in person, when we're doing in-person therapy before the pandemic, then usually the way this works is at the end of the session, at the end of the therapy session, we hand you an iPad, and you just fill out the survey really quick on there, just sort of, do. And what research has shown is that you're more likely, as the client, you're more likely to be honest, even if your therapist is sitting right there, if you're putting the information down on the iPad versus actually saying it out loud to your therapist, right? Like as a client, you might be sitting there at the end of the session being like, man, I really I didn't talk about what I wanted to talk about today, but I don't want to hurt my therapist's feelings, or, there are all kinds of ways that in our culture we're taught to be really conflict avoidant or to worry about other people's feelings and thoughts more than ours, even when we're coming to therapy to maybe even work on that. So anyway, if your therapist were to just verbally ask you, and sometimes we do that too, and sometimes, other therapists do this, it's a really great practice. If your therapist were to say, like, hey, how was today's session for you? What felt useful? Or was there anything that didn't feel useful? You might be able to answer that really clearly and honestly. Or you might feel like, yeah, it was okay, even though you might be feeling, it wasn't really okay. So by doing this sort of formalized feedback process that just takes a few moments of your time, it gives us the opportunity to really get honest feedback so that we can be the best therapist that we can be for you, so that we can keep sort of doing the things that are working and dropping the things that aren't working, because part of the therapy process is getting to know your therapist, and for your therapist to get to know you and figure out what works best for you, because every client is different, and all of our brains, they might work in similar ways, but we've all had about 1 billion life experiences that are creating our present experience. So every therapist sort of work specifically in a way that is going to be most beneficial to you. And this whole feedback-informed treatment process is super helpful in that regard. So what it looks like is before your therapy session, you get an email from your therapist that says like, hey, please fill these out. And it's just sort of, how you doing this week? How are you doing on these goals? Is this thing that you said is stressing you out? Is that still stressing you out? And then at the end of the session, after the session, you get another email that says, hey, how was that session for you? And you just sort of fill it out. And the whole thing, it should take less than 3 minutes. And it is really helpful for us. Not only helpful for us as your therapist, but helpful for you as a client to also get a sense of if you're making progress. It's a way for you to sort of check in with yourself too about, am I feeling better about these things? Am I feeling worse? Am I feeling like we're focusing on the right things? Stuff like that. So anyway, it's probably clear from the way that I'm talking about it that I'm a huge fan, and I think it's really useful. We'd love to talk to you about it more if you have any questions or concerns, and you can find out more at Seattle EMDR Associates. Our website is seaemdr.com. Thanks.